We are less than 3 months away to go till the 2023 Rugby World Cup, and it is going to be a tough competition. Scotland, who are ranked 5th, they may not have the tactics or the mentality to win the World Cup, but they definitely have the talent. South Africa, who are ranked 4th, they may not be the powerhouse they were when they won it in 2019, but whoever comes up against them in the playoffs of this tournament, they are going to have a very tough time getting through the rest of the competition. New Zealand, where I'm from, well, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, but if things go our way, maybe we could place 3rd. Then the two favourites for the title are obviously Ireland, who are ranked 1st in the world. They have lost just 2 test matches in the last 2 years, but it may be a little bit difficult because France, who are the host of the tournament, they are ranked 2nd. Kia ora everybody and welcome back to the Black Jersey. A big thank you to my patrons before we get into this video, because today, even though there are 5 possible contenders for the 2023 Rugby World Cup, the cliche is that the draw, well, it's a farce, and I think a lot of my patrons over here, you'd agree with me. Because the thing is, due to a lot of, well, let's just say world problems going on since the 2019 Rugby World Cup, it made it so that the seeding for the draw, it was based off world rankings as of 1st January 2020. So the performance of teams in World Rugby, their performance at that 2019 Rugby World Cup, essentially controlled where they would be seeded for the 2023 Rugby World Cup. And everyone who knows rugby, we all know that everything can change very radically within this time. Wales, who was seeded 4th due to their world ranking at that time, they are now well down the pecking order in the world rankings. And so this has resulted in a very lopsided draw that a lot of people are complaining about. Pool A is New Zealand, France, Italy, Uruguay, and Namibia. Pool B is South Africa, Ireland, Scotland, Tonga, and Romania. And so we see those top 5 ranked sides that I introduced you with at the start of the video, they are all on a single side of the draw. Then when we get to Pool C, it's Wales, Australia, Fiji, Georgia, and Portugal, and Pool D is England, Japan, Argentina, Samoa, and Chile. And so what I thought of was, why on earth? Why was this draw just done so far out from the World Cup? It just doesn't make sense to me. The draw for 2019 was also done in 2016, just 1 year after the All Blacks won their back-to-back 2015 World Cup title. And a lot of people have said to me that World Rugby needs to start making these draws closer to the tournament so that we get a more realistic chance for the best teams in the world to face each other in the World Cup final. And so, based on everything that's been said, I don't think it can be done a year out like the FIFA World Cup is supposedly done. I don't watch football. I don't know if this is the truth, but long story short, I've talked to insiders from the Irish camp who have said we kind of started preparing for the World Cup straight after Christmas in 2021. A lot of tier 2 nations, they require a lot of time to create those upset results. Eddie Jones with Japan started plotting to defeat South Africa at the start of 2014, and they did so about 18 months later in the 2015 Rugby World Cup. Eddie Jones also plotted to defeat the All Blacks 2 years out back in 2017, ahead of the 2019 World Cup. So the general consensus is it creates 2 years to create a World Cup winning side during a 4-year cycle where you use the first 2 years to decide on tactics and decide on your player pool. And so long story short, everybody, I went back to December 2021, the last time the world rankings were updated, before Andy Farrell and his crew supposedly started doing their research for the 2023 Rugby World Cup. I of course don't know if this is true, but this is apparently the case. Anyway, at the time, South Africa was ranked 1st, New Zealand 2, England 3rd, Ireland 4th, France 5th, Australia 6th, yay for consistency, Scotland 7th, Wales 8th, Argentina 9th, Japan 10th, Fiji 11th, and then Italy, who was the last team to automatically qualify for 2023, they were ranked in 14th place. And so I think that if the draw was made 2 years out from the competition, it would be far more realistic. It would still give those tier 2 nations the time to plot their upsets. And of course, well, long story short, it would give teams time, that 2-year period, to improve. before they start using the second half of the World Cup cycle to narrow the talent down and get into far more of a nitty-gritty approach to their tactics. And so, as I don't have any children who can just draw anything out of the hat for them, I've just had to go off and basically assume that the rankings from 2020 were the same for the draw if the draw was a year away. And so for Pool A, New Zealand, who were ranked second back in 2020, they were also ranked second at the end of 2021, whereas France, they were ranked 7th instead of Scotland at the end of 2020. France moved up to 5th, Scotland elevated themselves to 7th. And so for this, I guess, fake draw, we're going off the idea that the same rankings were drawn and the same, well, you have to work your off to qualify places were going to be the same. For example, the repechage winner. So Pool A, in an ideal world, it would have been New Zealand, Scotland, Italy, Uruguay, Namibia. Though this isn't a radical change, Scotland, who are now ranked 5th in the world now, they get a far better chance of making it out of the pool stage because you can't have the 1st, 4th, and 5th ranked side in the same pool like how it is today. We're going to use the same formula for the rest of the pools. For Pool B, it should have been South Africa, France, Argentina, Tonga, and Romania based off 2021 rankings. Now this here, Pool B, this is also far more realistic. The defending champions remain in the pool of death, able to flex their muscles, whereas the host nation, they have to beat the defending champions. The second ranked team has to beat the defending champions as well because France are both of those statuses. Whereas the giant killers, Los Pumas, Argentina, they still pay the price for not doing too well in 2019. And of course, they do still have that chance to produce upsets against some of their great rivals in the form of South Africa and one of the favourites for the title, France. Argentina are also a fair bit down in the world rankings compared to these teams today, so it still makes sense 2 years later. For Pool C, things don't change an awful amount, but it gives the 1st ranked team in the world, the favourites for the tournament, an easier way into the final. Ireland would be up against Australia, Fiji, Georgia, and Portugal, and I think we're all sick of Australia, Georgia, Fiji, and Wales being in the same pool every World Cup. It's happened for what, the 3rd time in a row, and Australia playing Ireland, we haven't seen that since 2011's Rugby World Cup. And so it would be far more of an originality, a more fresh feel to this approach. Ireland would be so much just advantaged by this, and they deserve that advantage because they're ranked 1st in the world right now. I don't know if I spoke proper English over there, but having the easiest side of the draw, it would be a reward for all the hard work they've done throughout the cycle. Then for Pool D, a lot of the rugby is dying chat, which I don't think is true. It seems to be coming from English and Welsh fans who are also citing Super Rugby not doing too well as the case, but England and Wales being on this side of the draw, they could learn the reality that actually rugby's in a really good place and their nations are just losing their power as a bit of a sacrifice for the power to be spread across the world more evenly. England and Wales kind of falling down the pecking order, Japan and Samoa on the come up, it would be perfect. Not only could we see Japan top their pool again and earn their right to be a tier 1 nation after they topped the pool in 2019, but Samoa, who produced an upset result the other day, yesterday against Japan, won by 2 points, they could also be in with a shout now that World Rugby's changed the eligibility laws so they can get a few of the older players back to rep their nation of heritage and their nation of birth after playing for other nations when they were young, like Christian Leali'ifano having Samoan ancestry but being born in Australia. Seeing Samoa and Japan both exit out of the pool stage, that would be absolutely awesome, but with today's draw, that's just not indeed the case. Imagine Japan and Samoa going through, Ireland, Australia going through, South Africa, France going through, New Zealand, Scotland going through. France would have to beat South Africa, New Zealand, and Scotland potentially to make their way to the final, to challenge Ireland's the best team in the world in the final. It allows the top 2 teams in the world drawing this draw 2 years out to face each other in the final. Whereas seeing this possibility happen today is going to be less likely for sure, because Ireland are in Pool B in the real world rather than in the fictional pool. So what do I think ultimately about making the draw 2 years out from the competition? I think it's far more sensible. It allows teams 2 years space to improve. It allows everyone to come back after the Lions tour. It allows them to blood new caps without worrying about what the World Cup draw is going to look like up in the Northern Hemisphere. Whereas here in the Southern Hemisphere, we can just really give everything a crack and just play our fun style of expansive rugby to entertain the fans, make those first 2 years just purely about entertainment before then starting to get into the nitty-gritty side of just being absolute champions like New Zealanders and South Africans have tended to do in the past. Ireland and France were the favourites for the title right now. Having this draw, honestly, this fictional draw, would give them so much of an easier shout. Perhaps it would have been better if I had a son or a daughter who could have just pulled something out of the hat, made the draw go that way based on the seeding. But ultimately, even if I'm just hoping that these teams were seeded the same way based on 2021 rankings and put into the pools that way, it still makes for a much more fun draw. And I think that the cliche of saying the draw is a farce is pretty true. Comment your thoughts down below what you would think of the World Cup if these were the polls rather than the current World Cup draws where we've got the first, second, third, fourth and fifth all on the same side, because it is a bit ridiculous. Make sure to subscribe to me as well if you enjoyed this video, because ultimately this is my full-time job. Got to create videos somehow and I can't do it without your support, so thank you very much for watching the video, guys. I'm going to see you later in the next one. Cheers for watching from Max.